equipped to.
Welcome to the March 7th, 2022 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. This time I will call the meeting to order and ask that you all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. First up on the agenda, we have presentations and proclamations, and I will start with a proclamation recognizing Demolay. Do we have representatives? I'll go ahead and read this off, and I'll let you guys say a few words. Whereas the Order of Demolay is a premier youth organization dedicated to teaching young men to be better persons and leaders, and whereas leadership skills, civic awareness, responsibility, and character development are learned through a variety of self-directed, real-world applications and activities, building confidence, teaching responsibility, cooperation, and community service, and fostering trust, respect, fellowship, patriotism, reverence, and sharing. And whereas Demolay has carried out the aforementioned for 103 years, and the Stillwater chapter has served the community of Stillwater since 1921. And whereas in March of 2022, citizens of Stillwater will join the members of Demolay to celebrate the 103rd anniversary of the Order of Demolay. Now therefore, I, William Joyce, Mayor of the City of Stillwater, Oklahoma, do hereby proclaim March as Demolay Month in Stillwater. And we appreciate you all being here. Please. We'd love to hear more about your organization.
Hello, everyone. I'm Colton Condit. I'm the president or master counselor of Stillwater Chapter, Order of Demolay. The Order of Demolay is meant to teach leadership qualities and life skills to young men between the ages of 12 and 21. We are based around the virtues of love for family, respect for religion, courtesy, comradeship, fidelity, cleanness, and patriotism. We teach things such as public speaking skills, confidence, and how to run and lead a business or group. And personally, Demolay has helped me a lot over the past couple of years that I've been in. Our chapter has proudly represented Stillwater at our state conventions and recently has been awarded Chapter of the Year here in Oklahoma. As well as represent Stillwater, we also do services to the community with lake cleanups around local parks and lakes. Our chapter has been helping the community for over 100 years now, and will continue to do so for many more. We'd like to thank you, Mayor Joyce, and the Stillwater City Council for proclaiming March as Demolay Month here in Stillwater. This is quite important to us since the Order of Demolay was founded in March of 1919. Also, thank you for the time and opportunity to speak here today at City Hall. And if the city ever needs anything, any help, feel free to reach out. We are more than willing to lend a hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Guys, just kind of stand next to Colton.
There you go.
Picture real quick and then we'll.
Lots of pictures.
Sir, Colton, go to the grass. There you go. And
Right
Taylor.
here, right here.
Right here.
Excellent. Thank you guys for being
Thank
here.
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you do. Thank you. Have a good evening. All right, next up, Chief Watts. No, Kyle Bruce. Kyle Bruce is going to help us recognize Citizens Police Academy.
Mayor Joyce, City Council member, I appreciate the time to represent the police department and the organization we do, and also represent and present to you our Class 7 of our 2022 Citizen Academy. I noticed Elaine kind of got shocked by Class 7. We have been around for a while, and it's a program that is going on strong. Just a little information about our program is we have 6 weeks together with the individuals in the community. We go over different topics like use of force. We bring in our special operations teams to kind of give a demonstration of their equipment and stuff they use. We do critical incident reviews with some of our officers who have been involved in critical incidents in their career at our department and other agencies, but now are working for our agency. The program comes to an end on a Saturday event where we have scenarios. We provide different opportunities for them to go through room clearing, how to respond to certain situations like suicidal individuals, and we also provide them the opportunity to go to the range to shoot some of our toys. I think they all enjoyed that greatly. Again, Class 7, I thank you for your time. Would you guys mind standing up so we can acknowledge you guys? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you to all of the participants in Class 7. I was a member of Class 1. It's a wonderful experience, and we appreciate that you all took the time to learn more about Stillwater Police Department. Thank you all for being here. Anybody want to move up to the front row now? All right, next on the agenda, we have the consent docket. Counselors, questions, comments, or a motion on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. Okay, I have public comment on items not scheduled for public hearing, but I've got a couple folks signed up for different agenda items tonight. We're going to have those speeches or people speak at the time of the agenda item. So I will move down to public hearings. Item 7A is receive public comment regarding a request from the Stillwater Medical Center for a map amendment to rezone property addressed as 721 South Stanley from O Office to P Public and 1202, 1218, 1302, 1318 West 8th Avenue, 705, 711, 717, 720 South Blakely, and 706, 710, 714, 718 South Adams from RSS Small Lot Single Family to P Public. This is CC-22-32. Ms. Carnley, did we have good notice on these items?
Yes, we did.
Mr. Moore.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brady Moore, Chief Performance Innovation Officer. I'm here tonight to present about the map amendment MA 22-01. As you can see here on the aerial map, the area map on the screen, the purple hatch pattern is the area that is looking to be rezoned tonight. The larger rectangle falls between Blakely and Adams Street, between 7th and 8th, and then the smaller rectangle you'll see there is between Blakely and Stanley, just north of 8th Avenue. This aerial map again shows the subject site for the rezoning. As you can see, to the northwest is the Stillwater Medical Center main campus, and on that smaller rectangle just to the north is the Payne County Health Department. This is a street view looking northeast at 8th and Stanley. And here is a view looking northwest at 8th and Blakely. Another street view shows a look going northeast at 8th and Blakely. And then finally here, a view looking northwest at 8th and Adams. As we look to the zoning map, as the mayor mentioned in the reading, the majority of the lots are being requested to be zoned from RSS to public. As you'll notice on the northwest corner of the smaller rectangle there is the one lot that is already office that is requesting to be converted to public. As we look at the future land use map from our comprehensive plan, the reason we do this is to see where we forecast commercial growth or different areas of zoning growth in the community. And as you can see here, it is red on the hatch patterns showing commercial, which matches the use that is being proposed tonight. The applicant's engineer, Stephen Gose, is here, as well as representatives from Stillwater Medical Center. before the public hearing. Do you have any questions of staff?
Counselors, any questions for Brady? Thank you, sir. This time I will open the public hearing and I'll ask for applicant's representative.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Stephen Gose with Gose and Associates, 113 East 8th. Here on behalf of our client, the hospital, seeking this map amendment to rezone. Brady covered pretty much everything. The reason they're asking for it at this time is to be able to continue master planning processes for that area south of the hospital. All of these homes or the parcels are owned by the hospital currently. There's a mix of residential rentals, there's some vacant buildings, and there's also buildings being used for storage and staging for the construction project that's going on right now. So, like I said, I'm here to answer any questions. Mr. Taylor's here as well. So,
Nick Stephen.
thanks.
Thank you. Next up, I have Ariel Ross.
Hey everybody, Ariel Ross. I live at 1221 West 8th Ave. So you might guess that I'm here because most of those pictures you saw were pretty much from my front yard. Everything rezoned is right across the street from me. I don't really have much hope or expectation that this is not going to happen. I think the hospital has already bought significantly more property right along there. I understand that they need to expand. I just want, looking ahead, as I know the hospital's looking ahead, to remind you all to think about the impact on the residential neighborhood all around this. Some of those properties are rental properties that I think are long-term rentals. I mean, the families have been there longer than I've owned this house. And I think we often forget to think about renters as having a stake in the neighborhood in the same way that homeowners do, because they're not financially invested in the same way. So I would remind you to think about them. And also, when eventually development happens, whatever it is, to think about, creating screening or how this development, whatever it is, can impact the neighborhood, hopefully in a positive way aesthetically, not create a significant impact in terms of traffic. There are a lot of families there, including my own, who have kids. I would hate for this to be suddenly a parking garage with an entry right in front of my house. So I appreciate you listening to me, and I will continue to come back as things happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Ariel. I don't have anyone else signed up for the public hearing. So at this time, I will close the public hearing, and I'll ask Brady to come back up and let us know what the Planning Commission recommendation is on this item.
Yes, Planning Commission recommended approval on a vote of 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Councilors, any further questions?
Just one real quick question, I'm sorry. On the bigger rectangle, on the very north side, there's two lots that look like they're only half shaded. Are those actually, is that actually open area, or did we just not get all the shading in on that diagram?
Those are not in this request.
They're not, okay.
Yes, they're
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilors, any further questions, or is there a motion on the item?
I was wondering, and I don't know this off the top of my own head, but often when we're looking at rezoning, there are certain requirements for each of those zoning designations. So if it were to be zoned commercial, there's a certain set. To speak to Ariel's comments about how the development will happen and what the parameters and requirements of that are, I will admit to not have looking into what public zoning requirements might entail. Is there anything that we can speak to now to kind of answer that question? What falls into some of that zoning, the zoning characteristic for public?
So it's very brief. I have it printed here. I can read it to you. It's a short paragraph, but I can sum it up in saying there's really no restrictions. It gives the authority to, in fact, let me just go ahead and read it. The public district identifies properties owned by the city and any other municipal, county, state, or federal government agency and operated for the use and benefit of the general public. The city adopts regulations for general application throughout the city. All uses, lands, and structures in the P district shall comply with the general regulations as set forth in this chapter. The last line is development activity on city property shall not require approval by the planning commission or city council as set forth in this chapter. So it's a pretty unrestricted use. That's the entire section.
So we would certainly hope that our hospital hopes to be will be a good neighbor to this neighborhood that's
Correct.
will be impacted by this development, but it's not much that we can.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense in the sense that development by public entities like the city or the hospital is all done in public, right? The hospital's board meetings are public meetings, and so, you know, conversations about what should or shouldn't be in their master plan or ours if we were developing city property are all done openly. You know, this isn't a developer coming in and just plopping something down. So, I mean, I think that's why that public zoning openness makes some sense, because it is all under scrutiny by the public at public meetings. And so, but yes, I in my experience with the hospital, I think would expect that they will be very open and hopefully cooperative with neighbors in terms of what needs to happen. You know, the fact of the matter is the hospital is it is where it is. There's not much hope of picking that whole campus up and moving it somewhere else.
Of course not.
And it's a central part of our community that needs, you know, we need to figure out ways to allow it to do what it does to serve our community well, and do so in harmony with the surrounding neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Further discussion, or is there a motion on the item?
Motion to accept the Planning Commission recommendation to approve the map amendment as requested by Stillwater Medical Center.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the item. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved. Next up is 7B, which is receive public comment regarding a request for a map amendment to rezone 802 Southwestern, 2302 West 8th Avenue, and 2324 West 8th Avenue from small lot single family to office. This item was continued from our January 24th meeting. Did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, we did have good notice.
Mr. Moore, I think we have an announcement.
Yes, that's it. This morning we received a letter from the applicant asking to officially withdraw their request for this map amendment.
So the item will be not just tabled, but withdrawn fully
Withdrawn.
from the agenda.
Yeah, that's correct. So if, I don't know their intentions, if they're going to put in another application, but
But
they've
it would
just
have to go
withdrawn
back
this
through
one.
the full
Yep, go through the
process.
full process again.
Okay, with the withdrawal of the item and of the request, we won't have a public hearing on it, but I did have one person who signed up to speak, and so we'll let them speak at this time to provide their insight. I have Brian Correa, excuse me.
Good evening, everyone. Brian Correa, 2401 West 8th Avenue. It is my understanding from reading the code that when an applicant withdraws his application, that the one-year moratorium applies. Now, maybe we can pull it up on the screen and read it. It's pretty easy. But the way the code is written, if you were to deny his map amendment request, it is equal to a withdrawal. This is a legal matter. And I just wanted to establish in the public record tonight that the moratorium is in effect from this day for 1 year.
I don't know that we can establish that in the...
If you'd like me to answer that question
Please
to
do.
you, it is my opinion that the reapplication moratorium does not attach until the public hearing is open, so there is no reapplication moratorium when an applicant withdraws.
It would only apply if the applicant had withdrawn after public hearing was.
Once the
had
public
occurred.
hearing had opened, that's when it attaches.
The code says withdrawn before
Sir.
the pub. Okay.
I appreciate your perspective, and we're happy to have this conversation in another setting. But the legal question would need to be
Okay.
addressed with the legal counsel's office outside of a meeting.
Well, I guess on its appearance, then, it looks like a perpetual application, then. If he can just keep reapplying in the future, you know, it's already been 8 months we've been under siege. 2 distinct applications, 7 weeks of delays of the city council meetings, and now the game is still on, I guess. But what I want to know is, when does the moratorium apply? So, I guess I was misunderstanding again when I read that if the applicant withdraws his application, I mean, it's almost like automatic, you know? But anyways, I appreciate you letting me speak, and I guess I'll probably see you again soon.
Thank you, sir. All right, that takes us to item 7C, which is receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit for a marijuana dispensary at 611 West High Point Drive, CC-22-36. Ms. Carlin, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Moore, I think you have an announcement on this one as well, or?
I think Kimberly's got it.
I can hear it.
Yeah.
I would recommend that this item be tabled to March 21st, 2022.
I so move.
We have a motion and a second to table item 7C to, March 22nd? Is that?
March 21st.
March 21st,
2022. That's the
2022.
date of the next meeting, right? Yes. Kevin Clark, motion,
Kevin
and
made the
Elaine
motion.
Zanotti, second. Right? Oh, Christie, sorry. Counselor Hawkins.
We do have a motion and a second on the table. I do think there was an applicant here to speak on this item as well. Is there? Do you mind if we
No.
let them speak before we
Not
vote
at
on the
all.
motion? Yeah, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name's Jose Sanchez, and I am the owner of the 611 West High Point Drive. And my team and I have applied for the specific use permit. We respect the request that was put in to table this. It's highly unusual. This is the third time it has been tabled. We understand there's some legal questions. Some have already been answered, and they're going back to talk to OMA attorneys again. And I actually requested if we might be able to sit on that and maybe work with you, with those legislators and those legal counsels, instead of going back and forth so much. Maybe do some mediation, do whatever we need to do to get this resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to table this item to March 22nd? 21st, March 21st, 2022. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item is tabled to March 21st. Item 8, general orders. 8A, approve an award of the 3rd Avenue Bridge Replacement Project to the Oklahoma Bridge Company in the form of a per-unit price contract that Mr. Monty Carnes will describe to us fully.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. It's a continuation of our other project where we talked about the husband project over East Boomer Creek. It goes back to actually about fiscal year 14. There were several bridges in a program to be rehabilitated. These were, I believe, the last 2. Funds were short. They were tabled. Fiscal year 19, we found funds to do them again, to reactivate them, and we were about to go to bids when the pandemic began, and we pulled these projects because we were unsure what the revenues were going to do, and also in hopes for federal funding. Here's a picture of the west approach of the bridge. This is 3rd Avenue looking east towards Perkins Road. You'll notice there's a weight limit sign of 24 tons. And then you will also notice, can't see it there, please look at the curb lines, see the water in the curb, and then see how the sidewalk gets narrower as you move on further to the east. We'll talk about some more of that in a minute. Talk a little bit about the existing structure. There's 2 things that we look at for bridges: the sufficiency rating, which describes the overall health of the bridge. 100's the best, 3rd Avenue's 25.4. The other is the structural condition. There's 3 components to that: the deck, the superstructure, which is basically the beams that hold up the deck, and the substructure is what supports the beams. Each of those elements gets rated between a 0 and a 9. 9 is obviously best, 5 is fair, 4 is poor, 3 means you're in serious condition, 2 means you're critical and you have to monitor it very closely or close it until you make repairs. Rating 1 is an imminent failure, and 0 means it's failed. Our deck is a 5, our superstructure is a 3, the substructure is a 5. Any component with 3 or less results in a structurally deficient classification. So that bridge is classified as structurally deficient. That's the reason for the reduced loading, and that reduced loading means that we can't run fire trucks. Where we use the sufficiency rating is you determine that if you want to replace or repair the bridge. Because the sufficiency rating is 25%, that justifies replacement. The new structure will be the same length. It will add a dedicated left turn. That 4-foot sidewalk we saw on one side, and it's 1 foot 4 inches on the other, will have 2 6-foot 4-inch walks in each direction and 2 7-foot bike lanes. So you'll have eastbound and westbound bike lanes and sidewalks. And that gives you kind of a cross section of what that looks like. That's 64 feet and 8 inches wide, and the existing one's about 35 feet wide. So almost twice the width. We received 3 bids. Oklahoma Bridge Company was the low bid at $2,917,681.76. CP Integrated was at $3,153,000 and some change. Haskell Lemon was $2,925,000. They were less than $8,000 above the low bidder. There's about 8% between the low bidder and the high bidder. You've got 3 bids that close together. That tells you that's the market price for that project. The engineer's estimate was $2,573,976. So we did some visiting about why we were this far over budget or over the engineer's estimate. Concrete and steel are the 2 big reasons. We had a conversation further today on another project that contractor saw about a 20% increase in concrete last year and is expecting another 10% before the end of this year and earlier in the year, and his steel costs have doubled. Those are 2 of the largest material in a bridge. The other thing is that's a very difficult bridge to construct. We've got Perkins Road on the east side, and of course the creek is very, very deep there and the sides are steep. So that means that basically they have to stage and do all the construction from the west and then proceed east. They can't do that as efficiently as they might like to do. With the 10% contingency, we believe a contract for $3,210,000 is appropriate. The project has $2,165,000 available for construction. That leaves us short $1,045,000. So we've got 4 places where we believe we can come up with the additional funds. The Husband Bridge actually came in below the estimate. So we've got 100,000 there, and that still leaves us a reserve for unknowns. We have 2 transportation reserve funds. You'll remember the 19 TR11 is where we got the money to replace the 26th Avenue Bridge. And when we get reimbursed through the federal government, because that was a flood event, we'll have those monies go back in. We also have another transportation reserve that has 400,000 in it. So if we close out the 19, use 184,000, leaves us about $700,000 short. So we're proposing we take that from the transportation fee fund. The transportation fee fund is where we deposit the fees collected from private development projects. And by ordinance, they can only be spent for transportation system enhancements in planning, design, or construction. In the past, we've used those for such things as the Stillwater Transportation Enhancement Plan updates and those types of things. So, as I said before, we're adding an additional left turn lane. We're adding the active transportation components. We estimate those values at over $1.5 million, so we think $700,000 would meet the this will meet the criteria for using the $700,000. There's $722,000 in the fund. If we do not, the other use we can use for that $700,000 would be to put it towards some project that we might want to do in the future and supplement the half-cent sales tax of the 260 fund. And that would be a good use. If we don't use the $700,000 out of the fee fund, we'll have to take the $700,000 from the 260 fund. So it's basically a swap between the 2 funds. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Monty. Councilors, any questions? When would the project start, Monty?
The contractor's anxious to get going. I'll text him after this if you approve this and tell him that it's approved. And mainly he needs to lock in his prices with his suppliers before they go up.
Okay. And then my other major question is, what impact does this have on the rest of the Perkins Road improvement?
Fortunately, that portion of Perkins Road is just a mill and overlay. So while there will be some lane closures while that's taking place, it doesn't impact, this would not impact that project or the traffic. There may be some temporary lane closures while they might have to unload some structures, some components. There will be new signals and there will be some new curb on the west side that could be some lane closures, but it will not be near the impact that we're experiencing to the north.
But 3rd Street will be closed.
3rd Street will be closed.
For how long?
We would estimate 9 months.
Okay.
But we don't see 3rd being much of a reliever for our congestion on Perkins Road right now. We would expect this traffic to go on down to 6th or maybe Virginia.
You mentioned sufficiency rating of 25%, but I wasn't clear if that's how our bridge was rated or that was the threshold for replacement.
That is the rating of the bridge.
And what is the threshold for replacement? Is it also 25%?
Now, about somewhere around between 60 and 80 is the threshold for, because the structural condition makes up a huge portion of that sufficiency rating. So, and if you have a really I would say it'd be akin to when we do full depth repair on a really good street. Mm-hmm. You may have a little bit that's really bad, but the overall street's good. Well, you just replace the bad spot.
Okay.
The engineering estimate that was about $2.5 million, when did we have that estimate done?
That estimate was done about the time that we rebid the project.
Which would have been when?
Was earlier this year.
Okay.
Earlier. The original estimate was a couple of years old. And, well, the original one actually goes back to about 2014. But we'd updated it in 2019, and then was updated this year. And they took that by going through ODOT's projects and took the highest bid they could find applicable for each unit price. And then, thinking that we'd probably be pretty close. And
So the
they
increase
kinda
in
missed it.
cost is based on the increase in materials for the current year, basically?
That's correct. And we visited with the contractors about different strategies. Do we, wait 3 or 4 months and see if we got a better bid climate? We talked to one of our local concrete folks, and they all advised us that it'd probably be higher. So.
Thank you.
Just going back to the traffic issue one quickly, because I hear a lot about it. I don't suppose there's an option on this bridge to wait until Perkins Road is complete.
Not at this price. If we could wait, and then we take the risk of what it'll be higher. I will tell you it's at a serious point. I don't know how long it'll be before it gets to critical.
Yeah.
So the bridge is it rated at 24 tons right now? What would it normally be rated at? What would we build it to?
It will be built to the standard that you could run whatever trucks you run down the interstate or run down a state highway. It would withstand those loadings. And those are typically they'll be as much as 50 tons at times. We would not want that traffic on the road, but the bridge would be fine.
I think it's just a gentle reminder that we are behind with roads, and unfortunately, it all seems to be coming together at this moment in time. So appreciate the effort in getting this. We do want people to be safe on the roads. It's just timing sometimes is not always the best.
And we appreciate that, it is a lot of money and the timing isn't the best, but it is where we are.
Yeah.
If there are no further questions, Monty, let's hear your recommendation.
So our recommendation is to award a unit price contract to Oklahoma Bridge Company for their low bid to replace the 3rd Avenue Bridge over East Boomer Creek for an amount not to exceed $3,208,700, which includes a contingency. Approve the attached budget amendment to appropriate $700,000 from the Transportation Fee Fund to the 3rd Avenue Bridge project, and authorize budget revisions to reallocate $100,000 from the Husband Bridge project, $60,428 from the FY19 Transportation Reserve, and $184,572 from the fiscal year 21 Transportation Reserve to the 3rd Avenue Bridge project, and authorize the city manager to sign contract documents.
Thank you, Monty. Councilors?
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the staff's recommendation and approve this project. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8B is approve a bid award to UBC Precast in the amount of $164,772 for the replacement of the Couch Park restrooms. Barbara Bliss is here.
Let's see if I can pull up some pictures.
We always enjoy the bathroom
We do,
pictures
yeah.
here. The sewers, the bathrooms.
Yes, I know.
Stuff nobody really gets to see.
Especially Norman. He really enjoys that stuff. So. Good evening. I'm Barbara Bliss, Community Resources Manager. And I'm here to ask for a motion to award the bid for replacement of the Couch Park restroom to UBC Precast from Blackfoot, Idaho in the amount of $164,772. We had approved $175,000 in the capital budget to replace this outdated restroom near the Couch Park playground. 2 bids were received, with UBC being the only bidder under the bid price and meeting all the spec requirements. Staff chose a prefabricated approach since completion of this project is typically faster than a traditional construction and is also more cost effective. We were also able to customize the facility to our specific needs. This facility includes 4 separate ADA accessible bathroom facilities, which can be labeled male, female, family, gender neutral, however we choose to name them. This concept also provides more effective social distancing for users. Each one will be its own individual pod, so you will not be sharing a bathroom with anyone, but you can bring in whomever you want to. The amenities include heat and air, which you don't see in many of our bathrooms, hot and cold water, odor-free water-resistant treated concrete floors with flood vents, vitreous china toilet and sinks. We did not go with stainless steel. More expensive to replace. They still can be broken just like the china. And to us, they look too much like a prison. So we wanted some attractiveness in our facility. Soap and paper towel dispensers, baby changing stations, the outside concrete masonry blocks, which are anti-graffiti, and the concrete roof is vandal and burn resistant. So we haven't burned any roofs yet, but there's always a chance. And we will retrofit the doors to have locks to be placed on an automatic timer system, just like we do down at Strickland. City staff will be responsible for demolishing the existing restroom and pouring a new pad for the prefab unit. We will also be responsible for hiring an electrician and plumber to install water and electric. This is step 1 in replacing all of our outdated restroom facilities in the parks. Do you have any questions? I've never been so excited about a bathroom.
I'm excited with you.
Thank you. I know what we went through with the Strickland one, so.
But it's so very important for our families that are visiting our park facilities to have a clean, healthy, accessible space to take their little ones if they need them. And we're not always able to provide that right now. So I'm really appreciative of the work that you've done to research this and find a good solution and an attractive solution for these park spaces.
Thank you. We're, like I said, we really are excited, and we're excited to see that coming down the road on this flatbed and the cranes that take it off, and we'll put it in place. There'll be 2 in the front, 2 in the back, or however we want to arrange them, but it'll be by the Couch Park playground, so.
Barb, does the budget here include the cost of the demolition and the plumbing and all that?
It does not.
Okay. Will that just come out of just regular
Public Works.
Okay. Councilors, any further questions? What is your recommendation?
I recommend that you award the bid for replacement of the Couch Park restroom to UBC Precast from Blackfoot, Idaho, in the amount of $164,772.
Thank you so much. Councilors?
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the staff's recommendation to award this bid. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Next up, 8C, approve a budget amendment reflecting appropriations of fund for repairs totaling $35,000 for runway 1735 at the Stillwater Regional Airport. Mr. Priegel.
Good evening, Paul Priegel, Airport Director. Tonight I bring before you a budget amendment for your consideration so that we can complete some rather urgent repair to our primary runway, runway 1735. Back when the runway was extended, where the old concrete joins with the newer concrete, that expansion joint has failed, and we're starting to see some cracking. We've taken some measures to keep the runway in service, but with the ground constantly moving, if this is not repaired, we stand a chance of seeing the runway buckle, and of course that would be not good. So we're very fortunate to have Contact on scene and under contract for our apron reconstruction project. And we worked with our engineers to develop a plan, worked with Contact. This fell well within what would be considered a change order to their contract. So we were able to work with them. They provided us a quote for $30,875 to make this repair. We normally would not have these funds in our budget to just randomly do this repair. However, this fiscal year we have seen a drastic increase in revenue collection, and so the budget amendment will show the increase in revenue projections, and then also allocate from that $35,000, which would allow for a small contingency, over to the 1735 account so that we can complete those repairs. And I'm happy to answer any questions before providing a motion.
Thank you, Paul. Counselors? What's your
buckles?
No buckles, please.
What's your recommendation, Paul?
Staff would provide a motion to approve the budget amendment, increasing the revenue projections and appropriating expenditures of $35,000 for repairs to runway 1735.
Counselors?
Move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the staff's recommendation. Please vote. Those budget amendments are approved with a vote of 5-0. 8D, approve a bid award to Stillwater Turf Services in the amount of $126,560 for lawn maintenance of city facilities. Mr. McClenny.
Good evening. This is an annual bid for lawn care at various city facilities, rights-of-way, parking lots, and small parks. And these are the things that are more difficult for us to get with our bigger equipment. We still do the larger parks. 26 locations were included in this bid, as well as an on-call mowing rate per acre. The dates of service will begin once the contract is executed and end October 31st, 2022, which is typically when the grass stops growing. We received 2 bids. However, the bid from Goodwill Industries did not include the required bid bond or acknowledgement of addendums and is therefore non-responsive. We recommend a motion to approve the bid from Stillwater Turf Services in the amount of $126,560 for lawn maintenance of the facilities and $150 per acre for on-call mowing. I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, John. Counselors? I assume bidding this out is more cost effective than us buying this smaller equipment and employing people to do this work.
It's more cost effective, and it also relieves some of the pressure on Public Works because they're trying to do lots of other things, and taking people off to mow grass in these smaller areas where there's lots of travel time is tough.
Thank you, sir. What's your recommendation?
Motion to approve the bid from Stillwater Turf Services in the amount of $126,560 and $150 for per acre on-call mowing.
Counselors?
Motion to accept staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept this bid. Please vote. Bid's approved by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, John. Next up, we have item 9, resolutions. Resolution CC-2022-6, which is a resolution authorizing the City Council to execute a project agreement between the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the City of Stillwater for Federal Aid Small Cities Project number STP-260C, parentheses 070, parentheses UR. Mr. Carnes.
Once again, this is the project to continuation of a project started a long time ago to improve Western Avenue corridor up to Airport Road and then Airport Road over to Washington. This is, I think, officially called Phase 3. We have funded this phase, our share of it. We have entered into a letter, I think it's a letter of agreement or letter of understanding. We're responsible on top of these construction costs for the engineering. That engineering is over 60% complete, and we have begun relocating utilities in anticipation of this project. This is just formalizing the letter of agreement that we have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Monty. Councilors, any questions? Or a motion on the resolution?
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-6, accepting the project agreement with ODOT and authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution CC-2022-6. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that motion or that resolution is adopted. Next item is ordinances. On second reading, we have Ordinance 3490, an ordinance amending the Stillwater City Code by amending Chapter 18, Environment, Article 5, Junk or Abandoned Vehicles, to amend Section 18-128 definitions by adding definitions for director, enforcement officer, and operable condition, amending Section 18-129 violations by providing that the enforcement officer has the ability to issue citations following notice, amending Section 18-130 storing, parking, etc., by providing that junk vehicles are a public nuisance, amending Section 18-131 general responsibility for removal by changing it to exceptions and setting out exceptions. Section 18-130, exceptions to Section 18-130. Amending Section 18-132, notice to remove, by changing it to rebuttable presumption and setting out criteria that establishes a junk vehicle. Amending Section 18-133, content of notice, by changing it to notice to abate junk vehicle. Establishing the requirements for notice of a junk vehicle by adding Sections 18-134 hearing, that sets forth the procedure for a hearing before the Community Development Director and providing for appeal to the City Manager. Adding Section 18-135, removal of junk vehicle, which provides for removal. Adding Section 18-136, notice of removal, which provides for notification of the registered owners of a junk vehicle. Repealing all ordinances to the contrary and providing for severability. Councilors, questions, comments, or a motion on the ordinance?
Motion to adopt ordinance number 3490.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 3490. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that ordinance is adopted. Item 11, reports from officers and boards. Ms. Carnley.
I have a request for an executive session pursuant to 25 OS Section 307B4 for the purpose of confidential communication with the city attorney concerning a pending tort claim filed by Keith Reed, a spouse and immediate next of kin of Terry Reed. It is the opinion of the city attorney that public disclosure of this matter will seriously impair the ability of the city council to process the claim and/or conduct an investigation and/or to prosecute or defend any resulting litigation or proceeding in the public interest.
Thank you. Mr. McNichol.
Thank you, Mayor. Highway 177 or Perkins Road is down to one lane in each direction from Hall of Fame to Lakeview Road, and I'm sure there's hardly anyone in Stillwater that
Nobody
doesn't
noticed.
But motorists are advised to expect delays, be aware of travel congestion, and plan for additional travel time or locate alternative routes. The project has two phases. Phase 1 is the east side of Perkins Road, is anticipated to be completed by fall of 2022. And what I believe that means is that there will actually be a paved surface there where traffic can be congested on brand new pavement. Phase 2 will begin after conclusion of the OSU football season. We will have additional updates every Wednesday, and they'll be posted online at stillwater.org/ODOT. I would point out that there's some traffic signs there. People need to pay attention. It, in some places, frankly, is a bit confusing. Some of the no left turns are reasonably small, but turning left on that at this point is probably not a great idea, at least during times of heavy traffic.
Yeah. All of us up here live in Stillwater too, and we drive on Perkins Road too, and it's a pain in the neck for all of us. I appreciate the work that Monty and his team and our transportation folks are doing to try to keep up with that. It's not a Stillwater project, that's ODOT. We're working directly with them every day to make sure we're giving you as much notice as we can to keep that roadway running as smoothly as it can, but it is a big project, and you're just going to have to deal with it for a while. Hopefully you can find alternate routes around the area. All right, Vice Mayor.
Yes. The Stillwater Fire Department, City of Stillwater, and OSU Student Government Association are hosting a voter registration cookout tomorrow, Tuesday, March 8th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Come out to Fire Station 2, grab a hot dog, tour the station, and register to vote. And that's the fire station that is located on Oklahoma State University campus. If you're unable to make it to the event, the voter registration deadline for the April 5th election is this Friday, March 11th. So tomorrow, 5 to 6:30, grab a hot dog and register to vote, or at least come out and see the fire station.
Excellent. That's a great event. Councilor Hawkins.
Stillwater TIF Committee can award assistance for small business enhancements. To be considered at the April TIF meeting, applications must be received by March 31st, 2022. The TIF District 3 application is available online at stillwater.org/TIF.
Thank you. I'm excited to see the work being done at Merrifield office on their,
Yes.
their
Yep.
facade that the
Looking good.
TIF committee is helping out with. Councilor Jaloski.
Yes, I'd like to share a reminder that the city's annual Trash Off event will be Saturday, March 26th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The deadline to RSVP is Monday, March 21st. Don't miss out on this great opportunity to clean up our streets and earn some community service hours. Learn more about the event at stillwater.org/trashoff.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
The bond proposition for new fire station number 2 will be on the ballot in April. We encourage all registered voters to participate. Election day is on April 5, with early voting on March 31 and April 1. Visit stillwater-org/time to learn more about Fire Station 2, plans for the new location, upcoming tours of the current station, and more.
Very, very important election on April 5th. I hope you'll all take the time to learn more about Fire Station 2 and get out and vote.
It's less than a month away.
It is. I would like to let you know that the Stillwater Public Library is holding their one shredding event each year for community members to securely dispose of your sensitive documents. This year's drive-through event has had to be rescheduled due to the ice we received last week, but the new date is this Saturday, March 12th from 9 to 11 a.m. You can bring up to 2 copier-sized boxes of materials to the parking lot north of the library and in front of the Prairie Arts Center to be shredded for free. Paper clips and staples do not need to be removed. Take advantage of that. All right, at this time, I will recess the City Council meeting before item 12 on the agenda, and we will go over and I will call to order the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting for March 7th, 2022. Is there a motion or question on the consent docket?
Motion to accept consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent docket. Please vote. SUA consents approved by a vote of 5-0. Takes us down to item 5 under general orders. We have authorized staff to enter an agreement for services with Ripple Glass for transport of recycled glass. Mr. Chris Knight is here to tell us about that.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Chris Knight, Waste Management Director. We have 2 more pieces for our recycling program to discuss, and then I believe we've got everything accomplished. On February 14, 2022, the trustees approved entering into a contract with Tulsa Recycling and Transfer Incorporation. Tulsa Recycling and Transfer Corporation provided us 2 fee proposals that they submitted. One included accepting glass and one did not. To accept the glass, it was going to be $19 more a ton for all the commodities to go to the MRF. That is due to, you got to imagine when glass gets all crushed in with all your other commodities, even though they have a lot of technology in their MRF, it's kind of hard to get it all out. So I reached out to Ripple Glass, which is out of Kansas City, and they're willing to come get all of our glass for no charge. We just got to accumulate 20 tons. We call them, they send a truck down, come and get it. They don't charge us, they don't pay us for it. All we have to do is load the truck. We will have to build a concrete bin to put the glass in, and that'll cost us approximately $10,000. Is there any questions?
How long will it take us to accumulate 20 tons of glass?
Honestly, quite a while. We do, I think it would take us probably about a year to probably do that right now.
And so this wouldn't impact, so the current glass recycling is, will you remind me what the curbside what the customers see curbside, that won't change.
No, none of the collection will change.
And right now our glass curbside pickup is,
It's your first trash collection day of the month. And then we also have glass at the Convenience Collection Center, so nothing's going to change. Just we feel that this is a better option, being free.
yeah.
Trustees, further questions? What's your recommendation, Chris?
Motion to authorize staff to enter into an agreement for services with Ripple Glass to transport and recycle glass at no charge, and authorize the general manager to sign the agreement.
Trustees,
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve this item. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved. Thank you, Chris. Item B is consider and take possible action regarding options for the commercial cardboard recycling program.
Yes, we, with the current processing contract coming to an end in June 30th, 2022, Cedar Creek Farms has been providing us since 2012 cardboard recycling containers for the commercial cardboard program. We were approved to start that in 2012. We did have a fee structure approved in 2012 by SUA 2012-3. We never implemented the fee structure, and there were some reasons behind that at the time. The decision was made that there wasn't a lot of interest in the commercial cardboard program. So to entice people, the decision was made to not charge for that, in hopes that once they tried it, we could get more and more customers. We currently have 60, so we have 60 of Cedar Creek Farms containers out there. To keep that program going and to purchase those containers, it's going to be about $600,000 to do so. I have some scenarios here, kind of laying it out, and the first one is kind of a baseline. This would assume we begin to implement the charge that we haven't been using, and that all 60 commercial cardboard customers continue with the service. We would have a $79,120 operational cost, an annual revenue cost of $79,200, and we'd have to purchase the containers $600,000. The $600,000 for the containers, you know, we won't make all that back, but the type of containers we'll be getting, we can use on our other side where we rent roll-off containers to construction, for construction projects and things like that. So we may be able to recoup some of that cost. Scenario 2, and the staff believes this is more in line, that 60% of the commercial cardboard customers will discontinue that service because they don't want to pay for it. So we would have an annual operating cost in that scenario of $32,368. We would have an annual revenue of $32,400, and of course we'd still have to buy some containers, but it'd be less, so $240,000 to purchase those containers. Scenario 3 assumes that we discontinue the program, but we do believe that we would have a loss of 20% of our commercial refuse customers, because of a lot of we've had some customers over the years that have came to our trash service because we offered the cardboard program for free. A lot of the businesses have a business plan that they're required to have a cardboard recycling program, so we believe we lose 20%. However, of the 80% that are left, at some point there's a potential of them generating some more revenue, because they'll have to increase their days of service. A lot of the customers have decreased their days of service over the years because they don't have the cardboard in the stream no longer. So the annual revenue loss from the 20% would be $31,503. The annual revenue increase from the 80% would be $37,871. And we would have an annual operational cost savings of $79,120 and zero for if we wouldn't have to purchase any containers. Scenario 4 assumes we discontinue the commercial cardboard program, but we allow the commercial customers to bring the cardboard to the Convenience Collection Center. Currently, the center is just for residential customers, so we would have to start allowing them to do that. It does create some issues because we don't currently allow trailers. We used to many years ago, but it became a safety hazard the way the center was kind of laid out, and in our agreement with the Empower that works down there, it became a safety hazard, so we don't allow trailers. We would have the same loss of the 20% potentially of our commercial refuse customers. We would still see the potential of the increase in revenue from the 80%. So we have an annual operating cost of $39,560, an annual revenue loss from the 20% of $31,503. We would still see a potential increase in revenue because even though we allow the commercial cardboard customers to come to Convenience Collection Center, we don't believe that all of them are going to take time to load it up in a truck and bring it to the Convenience Collection Center. So there would be an annual revenue increase of potentially of $18,935.50 and zero cost for purchasing the containers. Any questions?
So if we eliminate the program, how much of this cardboard is going to end up in the landfill?
Probably a lot, to be honest with you. Because it's a, you know, if we revert back before we had the program, a lot of the businesses who just generate a lot of cardboard, and even downtown here, that was the majority of what's in the stream is the cardboard. There's many customers that we have right now that they don't have hardly any trash collection, maybe one. There's many of them just have one day that they are paying for because mostly they have is cardboard.
So how much, in a year's time, how much cardboard have we been picking up on this program? Whether it's cubic yards or tons or however you would measure
We
that.
collect, with the Convenience Collection Center, 240, 260 tons of cardboard on average a year.
But you don't know how much was on this program specifically?
It is, we average around 20 to 25 tons a month, so about 200 to 240 on this program, and then the rest of it's at the Convenience Collection Center. We have some businesses that, I'll be honest with you, we haul them 2 or 3 times a week.
What's the fee that, you said we'd approved a fee way back in 2012, but we never charged it?
On that fee structure, there was a lot of options, but the containers, if we went that direction, that I would recommend to purchase that so we can use them on our rental business too, if we need to. The fee would be between $100 and $150 a month per customer.
Which containers are you, the 60 that we have to purchase here? Are these the rolling?
The light green?
They're like big
green ones?
roll-offs.
Yeah.
They're similar to what's at the Convenience Collection Center. They're just out at different businesses.
They're dumpster? I mean, they're the rolling dumpsters that are, I mean, we've got.
They're not rolling dumpsters. They're like, you know, have you ever seen just a roll-off container that's at some construction companies?
Where are the ones where are these 60 now? We put some of these at businesses?
Oh, yeah.
to pick
I
up
mean,
that
we
way?
have, let's see, B&C.
They have a whole big roll-off container there?
Yeah.
Okay, because we have a parking lot.
You
where I work,
have
we
you have a dumpster.
a dumpster.
Yours is
that-
similar to what we have in the downtown
I
alleys.
remember
These roll-offs are similar to what you would see for a roof tear-off at a house.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's what I thought, but I was
Correct.
like, we don't have one of those in our parking lot.
No.
Are those dumpster type ones also part of what Cedar Creek Farms owns, or are those ours?
No, we own those.
Okay.
You know,
But we take those and dump them into one of the big roll-offs before they go out to.
We actually have a rear load truck that goes around and collects those. The recycling, we have some areas that we can't collect with our automated trucks, so they kind of have their own little recycling route, which includes those dumpsters also.
So would those need to go away with this
Those don't have to go away. We would still do the downtown and your dumpster that's out there at your location.
I assume there's
and
other
we have
ones around.
a couple others too.
Yeah, okay.
And Chris, is it just impossible to think about making it easier if they were to bring it to the convenience center to have it be safe for trailers and all of that? Is it just impossible the way it's set up? I've been out there, so I know what you mean. But I think just a clear understanding that would be hard to change.
We could. I mean, we'd have to do some changes down there. If you've been down there, where the concrete bins are now, they were actually put in the wrong place. They should have been in another area. So when you have trailers in there and trailers are wanting to back up to those concrete bins, they're now blocking all the traffic going through there and just creating problems. The amount of yard waste that comes in, that's what mostly is going
Most of it,
in there.
yeah.
No one could even imagine that we was going to start bringing in that much yard waste. It was actually, the thought process was that right now each customer gets 10 bags or boxes or cans picked up at curbside, that if you had 12 one day, you had somewhere to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's blossomed
Awesome.
over the years.
I know I've hauled my share of bushes and
Yeah.
tree branches and so forth out there myself, so.
So we'd have to restructure it. It's doable, but we would need to move those, the concrete bins.
Well, and like you said, most businesses probably wouldn't bring that, or they maybe wouldn't have a trailer. I mean, it's nice to have those, right? I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Ted.
Chris, your assumptions here about loss of 20% of customers and that sort of thing, how are those arrived at? Is that just kind of your best estimate, or have we done any kind of outreach to some of these customers to ask them what they would do if we got rid of the program?
Well, we just know that over the last, mainly the 20% I'm talking about, over the last 3 years, they have left our major competitor, and they've told us that, they're coming to us mainly because we offer free cardboard collection. And we also know, because they've told us that it's their footprint of their business that they have to have it. Mm-hmm. Now, they could go back to the competitor who's going to charge them also, so then they would come down to the pricing on your trash service. And that's why I think we'll probably lose, because our competitor, they can just adjust their pricing where we can't. But they're just, like I said, there's just assumptions. And like I said, the potential revenue on the 80%, we see that the businesses at some point will need to raise their days of service, but we can't make them do that either. So it won't happen immediately, but eventually, over time, it most likely have to happen, or they're just going to have a big mess.
To your point, is there any opportunity to do some outreach with the commercial customers to understand what their tolerance level would be, or what their solutions might be?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Yeah, we could do that. I mean, I just know that for sure, as far as their tolerance, whether they take it to the convenience collection center, I feel that, in recycling, I believe we all know that it has to be very, very convenient, or people are just not going to do it. Similar to, before we had the curbside recycling program, but we still had the convenience collection center, which accepts all the same items, but not many people did that. So it'd be the same thing. A lot of these customers, for them to continue to do it, they're just going to have to be able to have a container at their location, I believe.
I wonder could you do like a cost share for the container? I mean, some of these, like a larger corporation that has ESG, like environmental and sustainability governance protocols in there, as you were saying, right, they need to do things like recycle their cardboard. It's part of their social governance. Would there be an opportunity to offset costs potentially if that was important to them, to continue that service somehow? I don't know.
And in all these scenarios, I didn't put it in there, but we continue to do what we're doing now, that is an option. I didn't put it in there just because I do believe whatever we do, if we want to continue, we need to start using the pricing chart that we passed in 2012.
So we need to increase our revenues to cover cost of service.
Correct. We just need to cover our costs, in which the fee structure that it was actually, when it was passed in 2012, looking at it today, it would still cover, on the 2 containers I'd recommend to buy, it will cover our operating cost.
So it would cover the operating costs to include purchasing the containers?
Oh, not purchasing the containers, just
Gotcha.
the operational aspect of it.
Okay, so there's that kind of twofold, right?
Right.
Operations and then potential purchase.
Just using those containers as cardboard containers will never recoup that money of purchasing the containers.
The cost for purchasing these containers, this is like buying new ones?
Yes.
Do we have an option to purchase the ones that we're currently using?
I asked that question, and the answer was no.
For any real reason, or? You don't need to answer that.
I can tell you, but.
Because that seems like it would be the most cost efficient. Because I can't imagine those old used containers are worth 10 grand a piece.
Well, and the answer was immediately no. I did anticipate if it would potentially been yes, we would probably had to pay more than what they're worth, new price. So, but we didn't get that far with it.
Understood. Well, I for one would love to maybe see a little bit more from some of the businesses that maybe the biggest users of our recycling program, just to get a sense of what their thoughts might be. I think what Councilor Jalowski's saying, is there may be some of them that say, well, yeah, we really need to do this, and
right.
They probably are willing to pay a fee as long as we're still coming in under what they could pay somebody else to do it.
And we do believe, like I said, that at least 40% will have no issues paying for it. In which the operating cost in scenario 2, we still cover costs. So we do believe there's definitely going to be 40 to 50% that won't have an issue paying for them.
And some of them might help offset that $240,000 we'd still need for the containers.
Correct.
That's the question that it'd be nice if we at least ask them to figure out maybe we could bring those costs down a little bit.
Right.
And still, I think for sure we'd want to accept it at the collection center under scenario 4 for those other customers who aren't going to be willing to pay for it. We try to figure out some way to accept it. But we may still be able to have a few of those containers out for the biggest users of the program that are willing to help offset some of our costs.
I will point out, and we can definitely reach out to the customers, and we did speak to a few, but not all of them by no means. That if the decision is going to be to purchase these containers, we're going to have to do that fairly quickly.
Yeah.
It's just taken for a very long time to get anything right now, and my worries would be they wouldn't get here in time.
Sure.
Chris, these are new containers we're talking about,
Yes, sir.
10,000 apiece. Is there such a thing as a market for used containers other than the ones we are already using?
I'm not saying there's not. I don't know of one, but there could be. I could do some research on that. I'd make a few phone calls. I haven't came across anything with metal right now. Seems to be like gold or steel. But I could check into that.
Okay.
I think an option or reviewing some of these scenarios that after sitting with the recycling task force and understanding their desire, the community's desire, as that task force represented the community to encourage recycling, to even try to get more people to participate in the commercial recycling program. I think it would be great if we could brain through an option that allows them to continue in some form or fashion, as opposed to all that going into the landfill. As I recall, Chris, the cardboard recycling is more lucrative and actually happens a little bit better than like the plastics recycling and things like that, correct?
It usually holds its value. It's actually doing very well right now, to be honest with you. It's went way up.
Now, I suggest that we develop a questionnaire that we can contact our customers. And Chris, do you think we can do that in 2 weeks, since you're concerned about the trailers, and see what they'd be willing to pay and what of the container costs they might be willing to absorb? So let us do that, and we'll bring it back on the 21st.
Works for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
That takes us to item 6C. Consider authorizing Stillwater electric utility expenditures of up to $775,000 for digger derrick trucks, a dump truck, and a flatbed. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, trustees. Lauren Smith, Electric Utility Director. Electric distribution has 3 vehicles and 1 piece of equipment that have reached their end of life and are due to be replaced in FY22. As mentioned, they include 2 digger derrick trucks, 1 dump truck, and 1 flatbed equipment trailer. Funds are available in the Electric Rate Stabilization Fund and will be appropriated by approval of the attached budget amendment. I have a motion, but I would pause here to answer any questions.
Trustees. Hearing no questions, Lauren, what's your recommended motion?
Motion to authorize Stillwater Electric Utility expenditures up to $775,000 and approve budget amendment appropriating expenditures from the Electric Rate Stabilization Fund for the purchase of 2 digger derrick trucks, 1 dump truck, and 1 flatbed heavy-duty equipment trailer.
Trustees?
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of these vehicles. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, items approved. Thank you, Lauren. Item 6D, consider and take possible action regarding additional raw water storage options at Boomer Lake, Lake McMurtry, and other possible places. Mr. Barth.
Yes, good evening, trustees. David Barth, City Engineering. Get my presentation here. So tonight I'm here to discuss the next phase of the water treatment plant and raw water delivery system improvements project. My goal here this evening is to leave with some direction on where we go for additional raw water storage for the city of Stillwater. I am not asking you tonight to authorize any expenditures. That will come in a future meeting. This slide is showing our project timeline that you have seen at a few previous meetings. Last summer, we did a project definition phase. We engaged with Carollo Engineers and Birds & McDonnell as a construction manager at risk, along with our city team, and we defined the project. And today, we're here to share our action plan with you and to discuss the next phase. As you can see from the action plan on the screen, we've got 2 tracks. We have the improvements at the water treatment plant. We have some confirmed improvements that you authorized us to move forward on in December, those being the caustic feed system to back up our lime system, the recovered water pump station and lagoon improvements, and then a new finished water pump station. And so we're working on those right now with our consultants. The next component of the water treatment plant is just looking at, do we rehab or replace the water treatment plant? And so that is still an ongoing evaluation. The lower tract is the raw water delivery system. And so we've got a cathodic protection survey that we just completed. And so we're going to be using those results to develop a Tier 2 evaluation of our pipeline. And also tonight we're looking at additional raw water storage. Ultimately, we're going to have to improve our call pipeline at some point, and we want to make the most of that asset. And so how we do that depends on additional raw water storage and also further evaluation of the pipeline. So why do we need additional raw water storage? As we've stated before, we only have 4 million gallons of raw water storage at the water treatment plant. The current average daily demand of the community is 7 million gallons per day. So if we had an outage that wasn't planned, we would, quickly run out of the raw water that we have to treat. But also, additional raw water storage improves our system reliability and resiliency, defers replacement of pipe or pumps, the call pipeline or the pumps at the call pump station due to future capacity needs. Reduces raw water losses due to shortened repair times. We've got one leak on the call pipeline right now that's been going for a few months. It's in a very difficult location, and so we're trying to engage with a contractor to get that repaired. It also allows for development of pipeline maintenance program that we'd like to do. provides for improved safety during repairs, which you'll see in a second. And also the lake alternatives provide a backup supply to the community. Right now we just have Caw Lake and one pipeline that bring raw water to the community. This is a slideshow basically of a recent repair that was performed on the Caw pipeline. And so on the far left you can see a staff member that is kind of bent over there. So there is, you can see my mouse, hopefully you can see that. There's water spraying out of the pipe because the pipe is in service. And so he's identified where the leak is. He's using a tool to ream the hole out a little bit so that he can do what you see in the middle picture, which is to drive a wooden stake right through here to plug the hole. And so the line is still in service here, and so you can see it's not spraying water out any longer. And so we've got a stake that he crafted from a branch that he found on the ground there to drive into the pipeline temporarily to plug the hole. And then what happens is they cut the stake off there a little bit shorter so that they can weld on a steel flange that's a permanent repair, and that's the far right slide there. So that's how we, our staff repairs the water line, the Caw pipeline now, when there's not a casing or something like that. And we've probably got a couple of dozen or more flanges that are welded onto the pipeline, just like the one you see there on the far right. So last summer, our consultants and our city team, we performed a fatal flaw analysis on several additional raw water storage alternatives, and we shortlisted 3, which you see on this slide here, to build our own in-ground reservoir, something that would be up near the water treatment plant, to utilize Boomer Lake, or to utilize Lake McMurtry. And the examples you're going to see here are just sample alignments or sample locations. Once we select an alternative, we'll actually go through the design process and select a more refined location that's the best solution. But for example, this is an alternative for an in-ground reservoir that shows 2 cells that would hold a total of 195 million gallons. That's located about a mile west of the water treatment plant. You can see that there's a 36-inch pipeline that connects the reservoir to the water treatment plant, and so water would come from Caw Lake as it does now, and instead of stopping at the water treatment plant, it would continue on through a pipeline to the reservoir where it would be stored until we needed it. And then if we wanted to take the Caw pipeline down for an outage to do some repairs like you saw that gentleman doing, or if we needed to do something to the pump station up at Caw Lake, then we could pump water back from the reservoir to the water treatment plant. One of the things I wanted to show you here is that the Caw pump station is limited. It can only send 14.4 million gallons per day from Caw Lake to the plant. So if our community is needing 7 million gallons a day, then once this reservoir is empty, we can only send 7.4 million gallons a day to the reservoir to recharge it. So it would take us a month to refill the reservoir if we depleted it. So the second alternative that we looked at, which is Boomer Lake, again, this is a single pipeline that would extend from the water treatment plant down to the shore of Boomer Lake, where we would have a new intake and a pump station. If water would be taken down from Caw Lake, or pumped from Caw Lake into Boomer Lake, so we would be able to keep the lake full most of the time. But if we needed to take the pipeline out of service, the Caw pipeline that is, then we would turn on the pump station and pump water back through that same pipeline up to the water treatment plant. I would note that Boomer Lake does have an existing intake, but we're not able to use it. It's really close to the new Lakeview Landing development, and so use of that intake would be detrimental to the Lakeview Landing project. So we would build a new intake if we selected Boomer Lake. Alternative 3 is to utilize Lake McMurtry. So a similar setup, we would have a pipeline connecting Lake McMurtry to the Stillwater water treatment plant, and we would have a pump station somewhere near Lake McMurtry that would be able to, again, pump water back from the lake up to the water treatment plant. So one single pipeline that goes in both directions. Again, the water from the pump station, the Caw pump station, would be able to pump to Lake McMurtry or to the in-ground reservoir or to Boomer Lake without any additional modifications. But we would need new pump stations at each of those locations to pump the water back to the plant. So this next slide shows some benefits that we have for each of the alternatives. And so what it comes down to is in-ground reservoir, Boomer Lake, Lake McMurtry, you're increasing in flexibility. You're also increasing in cost. The in-ground reservoir has the lowest life cycle costs. It's also the fastest to build. We can build it in approximately a year according to our construction manager at risk. Boomer Lake, the benefit there is that we're able to keep the lake full most of the time. If you've been out there recently, we're in kind of a drought here, and it's dropped quite a bit. So we would be able to keep that full with Caw Lake water. You do have some increased flexibility with Boomer Lake because their rainwater runoff runs into the lake to turn it over and fill it. And with the in-ground reservoir, the only way it gets refilled is if we pump water into it. Lake McMurtry has the most operational flexibility. It also serves as a secondary supply as the city still already has water rights there. And Lake McMurtry provides extended outage time that will lower the cost of planned repairs and maintenance. And so I highlighted the word flexibility there, which is kind of defined to the right. In this context, flexibility means that our Caw pump station or our Caw pipeline can be out of service for an extended period of time. If for some reason, if we had the in-ground reservoir, let's say, and we needed an extended period of time, a contractor might have to show up, do some work, and then let us recharge the reservoir and then come back. And so every time that they mobilize and demobilize, they're charging you money to do that. The other thing that the flexibility is in this context is that we can defer upsizing the Caw pump station and the Caw pipeline. At some point in the future, we're going to need more than those facilities can give us. And so by having an additional raw water supply, we're able to defer the upsizing timeline. The last thing is we're able to just lower the pressure in the Caw pipeline, which would result in potentially fewer leaks and reduce the chance of failure. Excuse me. The challenges with each of these three alternatives. The in-ground reservoir, as I mentioned, it has to be refilled before we can reuse it. There's no natural runoff to it. Also, the reservoir would have to be cycled through weekly to keep water fresh. So we could put the reservoir in line with the Caw pipeline, which might help with that instead of putting it off to the side like it is now. Boomer Lake requires a new intake, as I mentioned, and a pump station within Boomer Park. Requires coordination with OWRB, and it could prevent future industries from using using Boomer Lake as a non-contact cooling source. Lake McMurtry requires coordination with the City of Perry, who currently uses Lake McMurtry for drinking water, and OWRB. And then, of course, we've got to blend the two waters, the Caw Lake and Lake McMurtry water. So if you notice on this next slide, I don't show Boomer Lake any longer. We felt as a staff and as a team that Boomer Lake was no longer economically a viable option, and it potentially causes adverse impacts to the recreational activities at the lake. To give you kind of and this shows storage here, but to look at, in-ground reservoir was 195 million gallons. So if we wanted to use 195 million gallons out of Boomer Lake, that would drop it 3 feet. And so most people would notice that. If we want to use 195 million gallons out of Lake McMurtry, it'll drop it 6 inches. So you probably wouldn't notice that. So this shows you for the two remaining alternatives that we're considering or recommending. For the in-ground reservoir, you see a dashed line there that says 7 days. So we kind of looked at, with our consultant, 7 days as being the minimum amount of time or that we might need, or actually a planned amount of time that we might need to make a repair if we could take the pipeline out of service. And so looking at our 2070 demand, because this is a 50-year plan, if we're just looking at the max day, so this means the worst case scenario for a week, that in terms of our demand, that we could get 7 days using the in-ground storage and about 3.5 times that much using Lake McMurtry. And this is also assuming that we only use the top 2 feet of Lake McMurtry, because obviously we could take more out if we needed to, but only wanting to take out the top 2 feet, which is approximately 681 million gallons, gives us 3.5 times longer than the in-ground storage. And then if we're looking at the average day, so the average day demand is basically how much water do we use in a year, divide that by 365 days. And so with the in-ground reservoir, we get approximately 13 days before we would need to refill the in-ground reservoir, or which is also, we get a little over 6 weeks using Lake McMurtry. So again, more flexibility with Lake McMurtry, and which allows for us to, it's also a backup supply to the community.
David, this is using 2070 demand.
Yes.
Which is
50 years.
Well, I mean, it's
sorry,
it's not 7 million gallons a day like it is now. What are we projecting it to be? And
correct. I think it's around 30.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look. I know in 2041 it's 21 million gallons a day.
Okay.
So I have it right here.
It's not that important. I was just making sure that we're talking about, these numbers are based on how long would these facilities last if we're at 25 million gallons a day.
Yeah, so in 2070, our peak day demand is 25 million gallons per day, but then we've also allowed a 10% reserve for industrial use, and we've also kind of planned for if we needed to carry OSU for some period of time, we would have water for that.
Yeah, okay.
But our peak demand today is what? Or it's summertime demand here is much higher than 7 million gallons, isn't it?
Yeah, our peak demand now is, according to this report, 12.2.
Okay.
Peak day demand, yes.
Just, I'm sorry, but
go ahead.
4 million gallons a day raw water storage at the plant. What is our treated water storage in the system?
Well,
like
we have at the plant we have a 3.5 million gallon clear well that holds treated water, and then we've got Central Tower's another million, 44 Tower's a million. 10 or 11. Thank you, Bill. 10 or 11 million gallons
in the system.
In the system.
Okay.
Thank you.
But water systems are weird. I mean, if something happened to the pipeline and we had 4 million gallons stored at the facility and we had 10 or 11 million gallons treated in the system, if it's not pushing water through, I mean, we could only push those 4 million gallons through the system, right? Or can we use the treated water in the system if the plant's not running? I guess is my question. Does that make sense?
We can use the treated water in the system if the plant's not running.
Okay, so we could shut off the plant and have a day's worth of clean water in the...
Yes.
Bill doesn't think that's a...
Oh, okay.
Just add a little bit to that. Bill Millis, Deputy Director of City Engineering. So we have 11 million gallons of storage in the treated water in the system, but it's not always where you need it.
Yeah.
For instance, the Northeast Zone has less than 1 million gallons, and so some places might have plenty of water to last 2, 3, 4 days. Some places would not last half a day.
Okay, that's helpful.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, sorry. Just to confuse things further, we also have, David mentioned earlier, us supporting OSU if necessary. We also, it's a reciprocal agreement, and so we also have them to depend on sometimes, and so that helps. It doesn't, they certainly can't support all our needs, but they would help, are willing to help and can help in certain situations.
How much do they, I mean, if we were in dire position, how much can they inject in?
That answer varies, with time on their water source and how full it is, and their pipeline, their plant. It's generally probably 2 to 3 million a day, but they could not do that, for a week or two.
Yeah.
They can do that for a couple of days.
Okay.
So this is the last slide that I have before I get to a recommendation. So this is a 50-year life cycle cost comparison, and you can see on the y-axis there's a non-economic benefit score, and the in-ground reservoir and the Lake McMurtry scores are almost identical. The in-ground reservoir is scored a little bit higher. And so this score is based on flexibility, operational risk, affordability, public acceptance, land requirements, lots of different things that we looked at. And so one thing to note here is if affordability is the highest weighting that we have in our non-economic benefit score. And so if we had actually put flexibility higher in terms of the weighting and not affordability, then Lake McMurtry would have a higher score than the in-ground reservoir. You can see here, this is an expensive project. The in-ground reservoir, the cost estimates from Burns & McDonnell is $53 million. And you can see that the life cycle cost over 50 years is the length of that blue line there. The Lake McMurtry alternative is $4 million higher in terms of the initial capital, so it's $57 million. And we do think these cost estimates, at the time they were obtained, they were probably a little high. Now, given the current economic climate, I'm not sure how high they would really be. But anyway, I think the delta here is probably fairly accurate. And so you can see that the Lake McMurtry option or alternative does have a longer blue line, so it's got larger life cycle costs, and that's because at some point you've got 9 miles of pipe instead of 1 based on those alternatives that I showed you. You've also got a larger pump station at Lake McMurtry. So these costs take into account at some point in time, 20 or 30 years from now, you're going to have to replace some of the electrical equipment. You're going to have to replace parts of the pumps. You may have to upsize the pumps due to demand. So the things that you can't see in this are the things I talked about before, in that if you're able to take the pipeline down for a longer period of time, there might be a cost savings for the contractor not having to start and stop and start and stop. We don't really have a way to quantify those types of things. So our engineer, Carollo, recommended, after going through this analysis, they recommended Lake McMurtry as the alternative for us to use for additional raw water storage. And so I think it just comes down to this, looking at the next 50 years, do we want to pay a little bit more for flexibility, or do we want to look at the lowest cost here in the idea that we could use that $4 million to fix some other water lines or do some other things in our system that need to be done. And there's also the difference in life cycle costs too, but again, that's spread out over 50 years. So what questions do you have?
Mayor, if I may, there's probably been more discussion about this single issue by staff in the last month and a half, since we first started talking about it, than anything else. One of the things that is clear is that in the future, water is going to be more expensive. Not just here in Stillwater, but everywhere, because of its availability. We have a couple of cities that aren't too far away that are talking to us about putting in pipelines to serve them because they have no other source that's close. water's going to be expensive. And there is even some debate amongst the engineers about, well, how much do you have to plan for in a catastrophic outage? I've learned over the last 6 years that if it can happen, it will. But one of the things that is absolutely imperative when we start talking about any of these topics, the raw water storage, the pipeline, the treatment plant, is that we have to pay attention to maintenance. We can't defer it. We can't treat it like we have the streets last some odd years. We'll have to make some hard decisions in the future in terms of rates. But in your discussions, we just would implore you to bear that in mind. And we know you can't impose anything on future councils, but maybe you can remind them when you're no longer sitting here that those systems truly do need to be maintained. And no offense to Lauren, you can live without electricity, you can't live without water. And that's not to say that you would ignore the electric system either. I'm just saying that water is truly one of those things that we supply that is absolute necessity. Thank you.
Trustees, what questions do you have?
Well, I'm delighted. First, I'd like to say I'm delighted that we're having this conversation because I've been concerned about the fact that we have a single stream coming out of the Kaw Lake as our water supply. I've been concerned about that for a long time. And in fact, that leads to my question, which is one of the weaknesses of our system right now is we have one pipe that feeds our entire city and other communities around us as well. Has there been any consideration, I know it would add significant cost, has there been any consideration of having two pipelines from the reserve to the water treatment plant? In case we did have that, if it can go wrong, it will, scenario where the Kaw pipeline goes down and our backup goes down and we don't have any water.
So a backup to a backup?
A backup to a backup, a third backup, if you will.
Yeah, I think, we did not look at that because I just think the cost would outweigh the benefit, really. I mean, I think that the biggest benefit there for two pipelines would be that you could, be adding water to your reservoir and taking water out of your reservoir at the same time. Not that you have a backup to a backup. But the cost, because the pipes that we're looking at are 36 inches in diameter, so it's expensive to install this size of pipe for a pretty good distance, it just doesn't seem to make sense to put in a second one. And we've talked about a second pipeline from Kaw down to the plant. That is very, very expensive. And so we're just trying to look at ways that we can get the most out of the asset that we have now. And so we feel like if we can take some pressure off of that and be able to go out and do some planned maintenance, we've come to understand that maybe at the joints is where we are having the issue with these leaks. And so if we can go out and dig up these joints and do some maintenance ahead of time, that we can extend the life of this asset, 2 or 3 more decades, which would be great for our community.
Okay, great.
What's the difference in operational, like when these two options would come online? I mean, how quickly could we have one of them operating over the other?
Well, I think there's probably about a 6-month is what what our contractor estimated, 6 months between an in-ground facility being online versus the Lake McMurtry. So that's not a real big factor in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we'd have to go out and hopefully if we select an alternative that we're going towards, then we're going to get back with our consultants and negotiate a scope and fee to refine the design, get the best alternative in here, and then design that and build it as quickly as possible.
And I assume that your cost estimates include the right-of-way to build these pipelines and the land itself that we'd need to buy to put
Actually, I don't believe these cost estimates do include land. I'd have to go back and look at that, but I don't believe that they include the easements.
For the in-ground, do we own that land right there?
No, the land that was shown there is actually owned by the Oklahoma Commission, School Land Commission.
They love giving land away.
They like trading, I think.
Yeah.
Well, there was a reference to that in the packet. Have there been conversations with them about a potential land swap?
No.
All right.
Not yet.
We own McMurtry. We don't really have access to the land we want to use for the other option at this time.
At this time.
That just strengthens my fandom for the McMurtry option.
But we'd have
We
9
do have to
miles
come up
of
with 9 miles of
right-of-way.
right-of-way.
It's pretty significant.
Is that, you've got a pipeline. I know you said that those drawings are not final, but that the route that you show on the 9 miles is like down to Richmond Road, I think, and across.
Right.
Is that based on just the most efficient flow, or is that based on
Actually,
where you think we can get the right of way?
We looked at a couple of options on that, and I'd have to go back and look as to why they settled on this one. But obviously we had to make sure that we go around the airport. But I don't remember why we didn't just come straight east. Down Airport Road. There was probably a reason for that, but like I said, we'll get into those discussions with our consultant. This is just kind of a starting place to show you all.
Yeah, I guess my concern would be 9 miles of right-of-way. I have literally no idea how much that adds to the cost.
Well, and it would be an
significant.
easement, so we wouldn't be actually probably acquiring right-of-way in the sense of, us owning it. But so that's usually cheaper than buying right-of-way.
Okay. Well, my fandom leans towards McMurtry too, and honestly, from the bigger picture standpoint of we're going to spend $50-60 million on this project, we should buy as much as we can get, right? I think we should build as much flexibility into the system as we can build, and I think that's the history lesson of the COP pipeline in the first place, which I think a lot of people at the time felt was overbuilt or felt wasn't necessary, or we didn't need that much, or why are we spending all this money to build this thing that's way bigger than what we need? Clearly, it wasn't over the life of the community, and a 50-year time horizon. I think we as a community need to be ambitious about what we're investing in here, and $4 million or $6 million or even $10 million over the life of a project like this doesn't make sense to me to cut down on what our community's flexibility would be in 2050 or 2060. So just from that standpoint alone, I think it makes some sense to say let's buy as much as we can. So other people have a different viewpoint on that. Well, what do you need from us tonight, David?
So I have a recommendation. We're just would love for you to direct staff to begin negotiations with the engineer and CMAR team for additional raw water storage using either alternative 1, a new ground storage facility, or alternative 3, Lake McMurtry.
Trustees, what do you want to do?
Is this just a motion, or is it a motion, or is it just a recommendation?
Yeah, I think my understanding, it's probably noticed for you to take action, and I believe staff wants you to make a motion for them to do the negotiations to narrow their focus to one of those alternatives.
Thank you.
Well, is it, I guess, motion to direct staff to begin negotiations with the engineer CMAR team for additional raw water storage at Lake McMurtry or within a new in-ground facility?
Second. One or the other.
No, I think we need to pick.
We would
Lake
like one or
McMurtry.
the other.
Yes.
Lake McMurtry.
Second. So we have a motion and a second to direct staff to begin negotiations to build raw water storage at Lake McMurtry. Further discussion? Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, staff is directed to figure out how to do that. Thank you, David. We appreciate all the work that your team has put into this. I know not a simple project.
Well, and David, I do have to say, not to be flippant, but the mayor and I were kind of giggling a little bit because haven't you seen the infomercial with that special tape
Yeah,
that plugs
Flex
up
Seal
that
tape.
that plugs up leaks? I mean, a stick. I mean, you could just use that.
It's like $19.95 a roll on TV.
Exactly. Buy two, get the third one free.
That's true. The stick is cheap. All right, that takes us to item 6E, approve a sole source purchase agreement with Powell in the amount not to exceed $85,000 for some electric stuff. Let us know, Lauren.
Good evening again, trustees. Lauren Smith, Electric Utility Director. During final commissioning of the Stillwater Energy Center, it was found that there was a phase shift between the 480-volt switchgear that powers the auxiliaries to the engines and the switchgear that powers the ancillary service to the plant. The phase shift creates a scenario where the two switchgears can't be tied together without taking an outage. The ability to not seamlessly transfer between the switchgears limits staff's ability to effectively provide redundancy to the facility without having to take an outage. In order to correct the phasing issue, two new pieces of non-segregated bus duct need to be manufactured and installed on two station service transformers. Powell was the original low bidder and furnished the equipment. They maintain the original design, drawings, and documents that include all details, dimension, and fabrication information. Powell's bus ducts are not directly interchangeable with other OEM manufacturers and require significant customization to be compatible with other manufacturers' bus, resulting in significant additional cost and lead time if another manufacturer was used. Based on the original design specifications and Powell's bus duct that is in place, there is no other option to meet compatibility needs that would not potentially compromise warranty and/or certification of installation. For these reasons, the design, manufacture, and installation will need to be completed as a sole source purchase. Staff has received quotes from Powell for $78,001 to design, manufacture, and install the new section of non-segregated bus duct. Funding is available in the electric O&M budget for FY22. I have a motion here, but I will pause to answer any questions.
I can't imagine that the trustees would have any questions about that, but I will ask them anyway. Trustees? Lauren, is this a design flaw? Was this a...
You know, that's a good question. We, at the end of, when we were commissioning, we were pushing to get to substantial completion, and it was brought to our attention that there was this phase shift. Our system, we found, is unique. Our distribution system is unique to what the design was for the plant. And so we've kind of bounced back and forth on what happened, why did this happen, and I don't know that there's a good answer for that. We realized we had the problem, and we've kind of been living with it since, knowing that we would come back at some point and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the phase shift manifest itself? Does it literally just split polarity, or what's it doing exactly?
Absolutely. I have, if control can please show the drawing that I have up on my screen, I can hopefully explain that a little better. Picture this pie chart in a three-phase circuit. You have A phase, B phase, and C phase, and these colors represent those phases. Now, in reality, these are spinning at 60 cycles per second, but a snapshot, it looks like this. All the colors of the pies are in line. You can close the breaker right here seamlessly, and there's no issues. An out-of-phase system looks like this. You see the pie chart is very similar to the one above it, but we've rotated to the right a certain piece. So again, this is, you can't close this breaker in because they're out of phase.
Okay.
Without taking an outage. Either system is functioning fine independently of each other, but you can't tie them together, and that's where the redundancy issue comes into play, to tie those switch gears together.
You'd have to shut one down, tie them together, and then start it back up.
Yeah, exactly.
And do they move in and out of phase?
No. Once you're in phase, you're in phase, yeah.
Okay, but if it's out of phase, it's out of phase.
If it's out of phase, it's out of phase, yeah. And the correction here is to build what they call a transposition piece of this non-segregated bus duct that rotates phases. And so we do that on both the high side and the low side of the transformers to ensure that they are in phase.
Okay.
Sounds like you know what you're talking about.
We've been
and
doing it
$78,000 to fix a $70 million power plant is
Yes.
seems like a reasonable sort of expense.
Yes, sir.
Trustees, any further questions? What's your recommended motion, Lauren?
Motion to approve the sole source purchase from PAL for a not-to-exceed cost of $85,000, subject to satisfactory negotiations of the terms and conditions of the purchase, and authorize the general manager to sign agreement documents.
Trustees?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item's approved. Thank you, Lauren. That takes us to item 7, resolutions. Resolution number SUA 2022-1 is a resolution engaging underwriters and establishing parameters for the issuance of taxable refunding bonds for the purpose of refunding a portion of the authority's outstanding utility system and sales tax revenue bonds, Series 2014A, and providing other details. Ms. Carnley.
I'm going to try. We have a lot of help on this one. We've got bond counsel retained, financial advisors, and our wonderful city finance staff. As you may recall, on January 24th, the trustees authorized staff to pursue a refunding of approximately $54 million in Series 2014A revenue bonds issued by SUA to fund the construction of the Energy Center. So this resolution is the next step in that process. This is just step one of authorization for broadly, one, to approve a syndicate of underwriters, and two, to set some parameters for the deal. There would be another resolution that would come back where you would actually approve the refunding deal. Again, just in order to issue the refunding bonds and realize that potential debt service savings, Section 1 of the resolution is resolving that the syndicate of underwriters is selected as B of A Securities, Inc., BOKF&A, and Stifel Financial Corp. And Section 2 sets forth the conditions or the parameters for the deal, which is 1, a principal amount of refunding bonds not to exceed $54,870,000. 2, refunding bond maturities not to extend beyond the final maturity date of the 2014 bonds. And 3, achievement of net present value debt service savings of at least 3% on the outstanding bonds. And that's the resolution.
Trustees, any questions?
I think the important point of this is simply that we'll be seeing savings of at least 3%, and that's a positive for the city.
Yeah, I think the first time we discussed this, it was we move forward with this, assuming that we can actually save the money that we think we save, which I think in a dollar figure is what, 4.3 to 5.7 million, which is a substantial amount of money that we can do something else with. Seems reasonable to move forward with the next step.
Yep.
Is there a motion pertaining to the resolution?
I recommend you pass the resolution.
Please, thank you.
Motion to adopt resolution number SUA 2022-1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution 2022-1. Please vote. With a vote. Yes, with a vote of 4-0 with 1 abstention, the resolution is adopted.
Not even an abstention. I can't participate.
It's not even an abstention?
Nope.
Vote of 4-0.
Can I address that?
Please.
All right. The reason I stepped down from the horseshoe is that as a financial advisor, my company will not allow me to participate in anything to do with bonds because I sell bonds for a living. At least that's part of what I do. So, and I did disclose that to council in my application when they chose me to fill this seat. So this is not a surprise to anybody who's sitting up here. But I just wanted to explain the first time it came up why I just completely stepped away. And if this is not an abstention, I'm not voting at all in any way, shape, or form. So.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution 7B, SUA-2022-2 is a resolution authorizing the decommissioning of 3 2-megawatt diesel generator units located at Boomer Lake Station, and 1 2-megawatt diesel generation unit located at the water treatment plant, and authorizing the general manager to execute an amendment to the GRDA power purchase agreement to remove the decommissioned generation units. Mr. Smith, a busy night for you today.
Yes, sir. Good evening again, trustees. The developer of the Boomer Lake Station redevelopment project has requested that the 3 2-megawatt diesel gensets be removed from the site, primarily due to noise issues and spacing for future development. SUA currently receives approximately $259,000 a year in capacity payments for the 2 megawatt diesel gensets at BLS and 1 at the water treatment plant. These units are rarely called upon by GRDA, and when they do, they are not reliable and regularly require costly repairs. This was in the case during last year's Winter Storm Uri. Staff has researched 2 options: relocation of the units to North Tap Substation at a cost of approximately $2.5 million, which would equate to an estimated 13-year return on investment. Per the GRDA contract, they may provide a 5-year notice to terminate the agreement for the 4 diesel gensets, and there's no guarantee that they wouldn't do that if we did relocate them in that 13 years. The other option is to decommission the units. We could issue an RFP or reverse bid for the sale and removal of the gensets. It's believed that any decommissioning costs would be recovered through the sale. Decommissioning of the units also results in the removal of carbon-based generation from our generation portfolio, which could possibly be replaced with new renewable energy resources in the future. Staff does not believe it would be economically feasible to relocate the gensets in order to continue to receive a capacity payment from GRDA, and is recommending decommissioning of the units. Financial benefits from the redevelopment project could offset revenue streams from the capacity payment. I have a motion here, but I will pause to answer any questions, and I have a picture if you would like to see just a side view or an overview of what these units actually look like as they sit.
Thank you, Lauren. Trustees, any questions? Yeah, if I recall correctly, we went to start these up during the winter storm and they didn't even start, right?
A couple of them started, but they ran into icing issues with the urea systems that remove NOx. And so these units, to say the least, have been a little cantankerous in their lifetime to get running and keep running. But they have benefited us with the
Sure. I mean, so we get the capacity payment just because they might be used. Even if they don't, even if GRDA calls on them and we can't use them, we
don't get the capacity payment for that time frame that they're not available, and then we typically have to spend time repairing them to get them running again and prove they run them.
I don't know if you have a breakdown of repair costs versus actual capacity payments.
Yeah,
I'm sure we still make some money off of them, but
yeah. You know, by the time we add in O&M and repair costs, you know, that $259 drops around the $200,000 range, and just recently we've had some. Repairs that cost upwards of $25,000, and when you're talking about $5,600 a month per piece, 6 months return on that, it just takes a little bit to not really be in it. So the economic feasibility is not as good as it was when we initially installed the units.
Trustees, further questions? What's your recommendation, Lauren?
Motion to adopt resolution SUA 2022-2.
Thank you, sir. Trustees?
I move to adopt resolution SUA 2022-2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, resolution 2022-2 is adopted. Any reports from the officers of the board?
No, sir.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Utilities Authority is now adjourned. This time I will reconvene the Stillwater City Council meeting. We're at item 12 on the agenda. Is there a motion to enter an executive session for the purposes requested by the city attorney?
Motion to enter executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to enter executive session. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater City Council will now enter executive session. Is there a motion to reconvene after executive session?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to reconvene after executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do you want to vote? Aye. Any opposed? We'll now be reconvened in regular session, Stillwater City Council. Is there no action on?
Any action? No action?
No action on an executive session.
Motion
Is
to
there a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the city council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stillwater City Council is now adjourned.